Alright, so today we are going to be working on these Anachrony mechs. Give me 1 second here while I pull up what I'm looking at. Alright, so these should not be too difficult. I've done my base gray color here. I normally do. Let me move this camera a little bit. So these guys are going to be predominantly brown and kind of a rusty yellow color with their usual, obviously, silver on there. So I'm trying to decide really. So I think what we'll do first is go ahead and knock out the silvers. For the silver, we're going to be using Army Painter Plate Metal. My general go-to at all times. So there are 6 mechs involved here for this faction. Every faction has 6. I am going to go ahead and pop open. Nah, we're not going to use a new brush. I'll do a new brush for the detail work, but until then, we're going to base color pretty much all the same silvers. So since this is the first color we're going to be applying, we don't have to really worry about being too neat because everything else underneath it is going to be tidied up and covered up, so we don't have to worry about it too much. These sort of like tabard here, that's so like all of this stuff is going to be that yellow. That'll probably be one of the last colors that we have to apply. Now usually yellows are relatively difficult to paint on, depending on the company. Right now I actually have War Colors 1 coat yellow coming in the mail, so I'm excited about that. But every other company I've dealt with, all of their yellows are relatively the same. So we're going to have to be kind of strategic. What I'm thinking is applying a like tan undercoat color. And that should be all we need really before we apply the yellow. The yellow will probably be a few coats, few thin coats, if I had to guess correctly. But nothing impossible. So all we're going to be doing on these right now is just loosely going in, painting on the details that are going to be the metallic colors. If you're just now joining, thanks for hanging out. Appreciate you watching the stream. I usually stream Monday through Friday. If your first time ever watching. So this client did send me some paint schemes that he was wanting me to replicate, or not replicate necessarily, but for inspiration a little bit. But I did pretty much get the green light to do whatever I wanted, so it's always nice whenever I have a commission. Now this is a client that I've done work for already in the past, so he knows exactly kind of the quality of work he's going to be getting out of me. So he's not too concerned. On this one, he just wants me to have fun, do something cool. So that's the plan. Of course, if you ever want anything painted, feel free to hit me up for a quote. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy. If you are learning to paint yourself, good place to ask questions, get tips. I'm always available for questions, feedback, anything like that while I'm working. But again, we're not being really neat with this silver. We're just going to go through here, throw a base on there, not really worry too much about it. Whenever you're applying base colors, if you just kind of think about before you start throwing it on there, the other colors that are going to be going on, you can kind of save yourself a headache of trying to be too neat, too fast. There's a hair right there. I'm not sure what that's about. There we go. Nope. There we go. But kind of planning out your base colors will help speed up the process. Now there are only 6 of these, so I'm really not thinking it'll take too awfully long. Maybe just a few minutes per miniature to actually get in there and do it. At least for the base colors, then we can go in and start doing all of our washes, anything that we may need to be doing. But so for the metallics, that's literally all we're going to be doing. I'll do that belt a separate color. But for the major metal areas, that's it. So just going through, replicating that. Hope you guys had an awesome Halloween. We're halfway through the week, beginning of a brand new month. Oh yeah, I have to turn this off, sorry. Didn't even realize I had that going still. Beginning of a brand new month. This month, I know I'll be most likely doing some kind of Black Friday special. That'll be the only promo I run, though. In the world of commissions, that is. How's it going, Eric? So again, I'm not using a real detail brush or anything like that. I'm just going through real quickly, slapping on the silver. This brush is, I mean, it says it's size 0, which is actually probably true. It is a little bit thicker. What's interesting to me as somebody that uses a bunch of different brushes, some companies will have like a size 0 that's really short bristled. Other companies will have a size 0 that's really long bristles. So I'm not sure if they're measuring the actual like width of the point, or if it's the width of the entire brush, including the length. I would actually have to do some research on that. I've always kind of wondered, but every company seems to be different. I ordered some of the Warcolor brushes as well because I'm interested in seeing because theirs are actually pretty short. They don't have this long silver portion. They cut it really short there. The bristles are not as long. Check and see what I actually included here. All right. And you can see too, right? Like the more you do multiples of the same sculpt, the faster the process goes because you know what you need to be hitting. It's also something interesting you notice while you're doing commission work, at least when I do it, or any type of like armies, units, stuff like that, repetitive painting. It always goes faster and faster the more of the same sculpt you do. So obviously, right, the parts in between those little pipes, connecting pipes or whatever, those are going to get filled in with a separate color. But at its current stage, we're just slapping on the silver. We don't really care about that. So I'm going to start going a little bit faster here, so I don't have to spend as much time worrying about the silver. Now I'm a little bit more comfortable with the sculpt, so I understand what I'm painting. The base color is a deep taupe, so it probably looks straight up gray on the camera, but it is a little bit more of an earthy gray. I always prefer this color in case you're going to do direct washes on top of it, because you can actually tone the gray to the color of the wash. So like, let's say you applied a blue wash to this, it would kind of darken it up a little bit. You would have a nice mid-tone blue that looked like you did a lot more work than you actually did by just applying one layer of ink. So big fan of this color for that reason. Then you can even do a highlight layer of just a blue, and then it looks like you've done way more work than you actually have. So that's always a good thing to kind of keep in mind, the actual base colors you're using on miniatures, things like that. So, finishing this guy out here. Keeping it real nice and loose. If you guys got to watch the stream yesterday, I painted, it was like a Halloween stream. I did some spirit hosts from Games Workshop. But you got to see a lot of layering techniques and wash techniques on there. So if you're ever painting, learning to paint, anything like that, and you've ever kind of wondered about using multiple washes and how you can achieve some cool effects, definitely check back on the Facebook page. I also uploaded it to in 1080p on the YouTube channel, YouTube/Mini Painting Studio, or however they do that. You can just throw the search bar, Mini Painting Studio, you'll find the stuff. So that's a nice little video up there. As always, too, I do a lot of stuff on my Patreon page that's brand new, but I already have quite a bit of content going up on there. You can see that info in the bottom right of the actual frame here on the stream. That's really good for painters. Pretty much share everything that I do, so no secrets here. So just going through relatively quickly. Slapping on our colors. I think since I kind of have freedom of how to paint these two, I mean, the client's already excited because I did his Scythe minis. I did the whole set. And when he got him in, he was extremely happy about it. I need some more of the silver, but he was extremely happy. So now on this commission, he is pumped to see whatever's going on. Now, it's weird. It says there are 2 comments here. Definitely only see 1 comment. So that's kind of intriguing. Give me 1 second here. Sometimes the comments don't load all the way. Eric. Okay, yeah, it's weird that it didn't show it all the way on mine. Alright, Eric. So, a medium that I mentioned a long time ago would have been a floating medium. So, floating medium is usually used for... Let me turn this down so I can hear my own head here. So, floating medium is really nice. You can buy it at Hobby Lobby. It's really cheap. Essentially, what it does is it extends your pigment and thins it without... extending the drying time. So it's not like blending medium. They make that stuff too. But you can find it in the craft paint section at Hobby Lobby. Michael's, I believe they have it as well. I'm not as familiar with Michael's since there's a Hobby Lobby literally right across from my apartment, so I can just walk there if I have to. But so that's what I used to use. But now that Army Painter has their quick shade mixing medium that they just released, I've started using that. That's what I used like all day yesterday on the highlights for the Spirit Hosts. So if you checked out that video, you see me using it quite a bit. Like every single layer I'm using it. And I'm using it to make my own washes. I'm using it to do highlight painting, wet blending, stuff like that. So that stuff is like the new hotness. I ordered 7 more bottles of it, so I'm gonna have that I'm gonna have that on deck for a while. But so floating medium. Now this bottle says $1.99, but that's a little bit different. I've had this bottle probably for 2 years, and it's halfway full, I think. Yeah, it's about halfway full. But so this is floating medium. It's awesome. I use it for blending, all that stuff. But now that I have this stuff from Army Painter, I'm gonna be using it all the time. I'm already at like half a bottle. Just over half a bottle, and I got this last week, so... Yeah, no, this is going to be what I use all the time, so... now, I am interested in War Colors. They make a similar medium. I didn't order it, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's about the same quality, the same stuff. From what I can tell, War Colors paint is amazing. I got that stuff in the mail yesterday. And I already did like a little demo piece with the colors that I got, so definitely interested in buying way more of that range, like if not every single color they make, so it's like 96 colors or something. If you've been watching my streams, you know I pretty much use like a ton of Army Painter and then some Vallejo, very little Games Workshop, and some Reaper. But based upon what I have seen already from using War Colors, I'm convinced I need to buy a ton of it because it's amazing. Now, I wouldn't really use it for... I mean, obviously, if I had 96 bottles of the stuff, I would be using it a little bit more. But in terms of tabletop stuff, probably I wouldn't be using it all the time. It's definitely geared towards a mid-level painter, somebody with a little bit more experience just because of the way the paints work. So I'd be using it a lot for display pieces, personal projects, higher level tier commissions, but these are going to be tabletop quality. The miniatures are a little bit bigger, right? These are obviously pretty big mechs compared to 28mm miniatures, so the detail on them is going to be easier to paint, so they're probably going to look a little bit better than my average tabletop tier, but it is because they're larger miniatures, so it's just easier for me to get cooler effects on it, so I don't really mind in that area. It's pretty much how it goes. You know, if you have something big, it's not going to take me that long to paint it, as long as it's not like a, you know, display level commission. So I can usually do cooler effects. It'll look a little bit better just because it's big. Alright, so now we're going to move on to the last one here. Last of these guys. I don't remember how many factions there are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 factions. So there are 4 other factions other than these. And I'm assuming I'll be able to paint a faction a day, so I should be done by next week. Maybe Monday or Tuesday. If I work over the weekend, I'm for sure going to be done. And if I do work on these over the weekend, which I probably will, I'll definitely stream it. Just because I've never painted Anachrony stuff before, so anytime I do a commission that's like brand new, I don't like to cheapen out on you guys, so like you don't get to watch. Now, in the instance of the large Warhammer 40,000 army I'm painting, there's just so much stuff there and so many repetitive models. You know, you're not going to see me paint all, 80 basic guardsmen, right? Because if you see me paint 20 of them, you see me paint 80 of them, but for stuff like this, I think it's important, especially for board game commissions, not everyone, like I know for sure there's probably not a tutorial video out there of how to paint Anachrony. So, these streams are going to be really beneficial for people if they're interested in that. Also, obviously too, these videos are going to be hours in length. So it's an easy way for me to promote my Patreon page, because what I do is I edit down my streams and I speed them way up so that you can actually see more of what I'm doing in a faster video. They're usually between 8 to 15 minutes per stream that I speed up, and then I explain the process. So if you're ever interested in learning to paint specific stuff, it's a really easy way to do that. You can check out my Patreon again, patreon.com/minipaintingstudio. It's $3 or $5 a month, so it's really up to you. It's not a lot of money. Alright, so these are all finished. So now we can kind of figure out what color we want to do next. I'm thinking we're just going to paint on the brown that's going to go for their little skirts they're wearing. So that'll be really easy. If you've watched the stream before and you just heard me say we need to paint something brown, you can probably guess what brown we're going to use. And I apologize again because what it looks like is my comments aren't coming in all the way. Okay, yeah, they are. All right. You can probably guess what brown we're going to use. Oh, we got to block that. Afternoon streams on Facebook Live. Always a problem. Always something going on. All right, so favorite brown color to use of all time. You already know what it is if you watch me. That's right, you guessed it. Raw sienna. Best brown in the biz. Alright, so we're going to apply this directly out of the bottle. There's no reason to thin it out, anything like that. This color is amazing. Always gives you good coverage. Never have to worry about a thing. So I'm going to rotate. I'm going to push these dudes out of the way. What does the base look like? That's interesting. Alright. These showed up in the mail at like 12:30, and then I primed them. So I haven't even really I haven't looked at them much. I just pulled one faction out, and I was like, yeah, we're gonna knock these dudes out. So I did lie. It's actually really dry in my house today. So I am going to water it down just a slight bit, like one brushful. There we go. And then I'm going to go through and just start knocking it out. So this raw sienna color is really cool. It's sort of along the same lines as how I was describing the gray color that I used here for the base color. It's really, really good for using washes because you can tone it all kinds of different ways and you get different results. So like you could paint this brown color in the same place or on the same miniature, different places, and then use different washes, and it'll look like a completely different base color all over the miniature. So really, really versatile color as long as you need browns, right? Well, I was about to say you can't make it look like a different color completely, but I'm sort of lying. Like, you can make this look like a dark green. You can make the brown look like a dark blue. You can make it look like a red, depending on the types of washes you're doing. But beyond that, it's kind of hard. But if you're doing multiple browns on a character, super, super awesome. Because all you have to do is apply washes. So you'll see what I'm doing here. I'm just going through. We're only going to do one coat as well. It's really not going to take much work. Whoa, my camera just freaked out on me. It's not going to take much work here on these, just one coat. It's a great color for that reason. But we're just blocking in the area wherever we're going to have these little brown skirts that they're wearing. Then we'll do probably a sepia wash. Then after the sepia wash, we'll probably do like a dark tone or a strong tone from Army Painter all over the entire miniature. And that'll be the extent of the work really for the shading. Depending on how we do the yellow. I'm still not 100% sure about the yellow. How's it going, Ben? Alright, and now remember what I said too, right? Like, knowing... Well, I didn't need to paint that brown, but... Knowing the order in which you're going to paint stuff helps, because you don't have to be as precise. So, like, getting it on his hand right there, not a big deal, because I'm going in order of what's going to be painted. So I don't have to be super precise. Going back in, doing the last little section, and he'll be finished for the brown. Alright, so that's it. So that's all the brown that we're going to be using there. Right? Yep. Now, are you guys seeing that same weird flicker? Yeah, you are. Okay. I'm not sure. Hold on one second. Let me, like, literally disable my camera and then enable it. Because that's definitely a brand new trick. You still doing it? Still doing it? You good? You good, camera? Sorry if you're getting motion sick. Just want to make sure everything's good. Alright. If it continues to do that, we'll just ignore it. What's up, Juan? Hope you're having a good day. What time is it over there in Spain? If I had to guess, maybe like 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock? No. Maybe like 9 p.m.? I don't know what time it would be. I don't really have... The only person that I speak to regularly that's overseas lives in either Taipei or Japan. Oh, so maybe it is way later than that. I'm not sure. So either late evening? I don't think it'd be early morning. Maybe you'll surprise me. I don't know. So I'm hoping that weird camera issue's fixed. You know, obviously I'm not watching my second monitor here all the time that I have the camera up on. So if that keeps happening, I don't know. That's a brand new thing. I've never seen it do that. But I think re-enabling the camera fixed it, so I don't know. We'll see. Good old afternoon streams. Always something weird. So, thin layers here. What's nice about this color is that it has amazing coverage. So you can go pretty thin and you won't ever really have any issues with the amount of pigment that's going on there. Usually for browns, I don't know, it depends. I would say the darker or redder the brown, the worst coverage it has. This obviously is a lighter brown color, so you are not really going to have to fight with the pigment to get a good coat. So we're only going to have to do one coat, which is great. And then whenever we go back in for the wash, we can just highlight it back up once. We might even use a... Oh, look, the camera's doing that thing again. Huh, I wonder what the problem is. But when we go back in, we might actually use a completely different brown. What I'm thinking is the external USB cord. Yeah, I'm going to check this in a second. Once I finish this guy, I'm going to put him down. I use a external USB deal to plug the camera into, so that may be the root of this weird flicker, because I think my microphone is sitting on top of it, the cable. All right, so I'm going to clean my brush. Okay. All right. I'm gonna turn this. Actually, I'm just gonna flip this. So we're still here. We're still painting. Don't worry about a thing. Yep, and I do believe this was the error that we were having, was right here. Still here. I was just moving the camera. Let's see if I wiggle this. If that was the weird problem we were having. I really don't want to unplug it, but maybe I will. Alright, so I'm going to flip back. Unplug this camera completely. Plug it into another port. Now, who knows? Maybe I just broke the stream. We'll find out, right? Okay, cross your fingers. Oh, it froze. Okay, hold on. Are you broken? There we go. Hello. Making sure it's still the same settings. All right. We're going to assume that everything's fine. Everything's cool. Give me 1 second, though. I am going to adjust the camera, or at least the video. I think it reset my my lighting here. Let's do auto. There we go. There we go. So now I believe we're doing good on color. So now you can see that brown much better. There we go. We don't have that weird blue tint going on. All right. So you can see the brown we're using. It's a nice hearty brown. It's relatively light. It's not super dark or anything like that. All right, so mixing in a little tiny bit more water back into this brown. Moving on to the next guy. Thanks for hanging out and joining us today. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Hope you had a great Halloween if you celebrate Halloween in your part of the world. Yesterday's was my mom's birthday, so the family always has a get-together. The niece goes trick-or-treating, and then we just hand out candy. Had the funniest pair of trick-or-treaters I have probably seen in my entire life. It almost felt as if it was a prank, or like we were on a TV show. These two girls came to the door, and they were wearing these just super extravagant costumes that were either meant for adults or like someone made them for them, just based upon the materials, right? Like, these weren't cheap by any means. One of them was an owl, and the other one was an eagle. So they were both two birds. And the funniest thing, I mean, they walked up to the door and they were talking to someone that was like outside, you know, away from them somewhere. And a lot of the kids too, because it was cold, like their parents were just driving them to different parts of the neighborhood and then waiting in a car. So they were talking to someone, then they finally knock on the door. I open the door, and it was pretty cold, right? And like I didn't really know what to say to the kids, so I'm just kind of like, "Oh, is it cold out here tonight? You guys, you all right? You know?" And this girl, they had to be, you know, I would say, it's always hard to tell, sort of like teenagers' ages or like kids that are about to be teens, but they were probably like 5th grade to 8th grade age. And I wish I had a camera rolling, because it was the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. I asked how this girl's doing, and I'm like, "You guys freezing out here? It's pretty cold." And in the best voice imaginable, all you hear her say, she looks right at me and she goes, "I can't feel my face and I love it." And I literally almost died as soon as she said that. Her friend stood there, dressed up like an eagle, like a silent assassin. She didn't say a word the entire time. Just standing there like a silent guardian. The owl, she was definitely out there just eating all the candy as they got it, 'cause she was hyped, talking about how she couldn't feel her face and she loved it. She started telling us some story. I mean, this girl was all about it. She was like, "Oh, I love your house. I love your pumpkins. Da-da-da-da-da. I love it all so much." And then, of course, my mom, who's, like, dressed for her birthday, comes around the corner. And she's like, "Oh, I love your sweater." My mom's wearing a sweater that has that little, like, pug's head on it. It's so funny. And then my parents have these crazy feral cats that they brought in that are all Manx, so they don't have tails. And so one of the cats comes around the corner to see what the hell's going on, because obviously there's this conversation happening. And then she's like, "Oh, I love your cat. Oh my gosh, I love it." And she proceeds to tell us a story about a stray cat that she found, that she was petting, that was rubbing on her leg and wouldn't leave her alone. And then the girl proceeds to talk as she's walking away. So she's doing the walk and talk, where you don't know how to end a conversation, but you just keep going. And she continues the walk and talk all the way down the, like, I don't even know what the word would be, but like the walkway leading up to my parents' front door. And then at the last second, she's like, "Okay, great. You guys have a great Halloween. Thank you." And just walks off. So that was probably the funniest event of the night, but for the rest of my life, I will never forget her saying, "I can't feel my face, and I love it." I think that was probably the funniest thing I've ever heard. I wish I had it recorded. Their costumes were extravagant. My mom, it was so funny, one of their neighbors, they have a little girl, and she was dressed as Batman. But, I mean, it's a little girl, right? So my mom, she was like, "Oh, you're dressed up as Batgirl. Oh, you're so cute." And the girl, like, yells at my mom, and she's like, "No, I'm Batman. I'm not Batgirl." And the dad's like, "Yeah, Batman's way cooler. She wanted to be Batman." I thought that was pretty funny. Alright, so as you can see, these little skirts are pretty quick. We have 2 left, 1 more after this guy, and then we can abandon the brown. Start figuring out the strategy for the yellow color that we're going to be doing. But if you had anything crazy happen last night on Halloween, feel free to let me know in the chat. If it's your first time watching the stream, thanks for joining. Feel free to like and follow the page. You can do and or either, I don't really mind. I stream my commissions Monday through Friday, so I'll be streaming the Anachrony mechs here over the next few days. I've been doing some personal projects off and on, over the last few days at least. But now this commission came in the mail today, so I'll be knocking it out. That's what we're going to be working on, all the 5 different factions. If you're just now joining, the only thing we've done so far, the miniatures were base coated. You can see this is the actual plastic color that they came, you know, from factory. Then we did it a little bit deeper brown color for the base coat. And that's it. We did the silver, which is plate metal silver from the army painter. And now we are applying a raw sienna to their skirts, because giant robots have skirts. Makes sense. After that, though, we need to figure out, because these guys are going to be kind of like a orangey, rusty yellow color. So once that's complete, we'll have to figure out the best approach for that. But everything else is going to be really simple. It's just going to be a matter of doing washes and layering the color back on. This is just going to be a tabletop level commission. But since the miniatures are larger, I can kind of go in and do a little bit more work without worrying about wasting time or spending too much time. Not wasting. But, so that means I may do a little bit more advanced techniques. You might see layering done on the highlights, things like that. But there'll only be one color, of course. There are a couple features on a few of the mechs, though, that I know I want to accentuate, there you go, with some cooler paint work, so that'll be neat. These guys, I think really the impressive part's just going to be their yellow armor. Actually, I think what we'll do, once we get that good base yellow color, or whatever color I end up using, we may use like a golden yellow, so that way I can go higher highlight than that. But I think the technique that I'll use, the same technique I did yesterday for the Spooky Halloween Spectacular stream, we're going to use a gloss coat before we apply the wash, which if you're a miniature painter, you may not even know, actually. I mean, I didn't know for years that applying a gloss coat before doing a wash would actually make that big of a difference. But what it does, it allows the ink to slide right off the highest parts, so you actually keep that base color, and then it gives a perfectly smooth transition to whatever color the wash is. So we may do that to create kind of a reddish rust on top of the yellow, and it'll probably look amazing. Then, of course, you know, you may be thinking, well, you use a gloss coat, right? So it's going to be really shiny. The nice thing about it is there's actually a matte medium inside of all inks and washes, so it completely kills the shine. So there's your answer to that. And then if any is remaining and you can still see it, I always varnish everything anyway, so it'll disappear then. All right, so we have all 6 of these ready to go. They are finito. I was considering doing the claw a separate color. Oh, there we go. So we'll have to figure that out. Let me close this up, get some paint out of the way here. That's funny, Amy. Yeah, if I shave my beard, which currently is extremely lumberjackish, if I shave, I look like I'm 15. So, and I also don't have the deepest voice in the world. So, you know, anytime I buy booze, it's kind of an issue. All right, so let me see. Somebody sent me a quick message. Hey Daniel, I'm gonna answer your question right now. So somebody sent me a message saying how much water to add to the paint before you paint. To not give you like the lamest answer possible, I'll just say, well, the lamest answer possible is, let me plug my Patreon, because the next class that I'm starting on my Patreon page is actually all about layering. So there's going to be a whole exercise to do to understand how much water to add to paints to thin it, you know, the consistency you're looking for, stuff like that. But the easiest short answer is, you know, you can always add water to paint. There are 2 different reasons. One, let's say you're painting and wherever you're applying the paint, right? If it starts to dry out on you, like while it's on the palette, that's when you know you need to add a little bit of water. You can also buy blending medium, which is just this like, you know, see-through goo, and that extends the actual drying time on your paint. So you can use that a little bit, but it does thin out the actual coverage you'll get on the paint. Part 2 to that is the quality of the paint you're using. So for instance, you know, I use this Delta Creative paint all the time, and it's super high pigment acrylic, but it does dry kind of fast. But even if you extend it, you know, you don't lose too much pigment. But on the other end of that, a company like Warcolors that makes, now see right here, it says it's level 3 opaque. That's kind of not always true. Like their level 3 opaque is actually super runny and like thin. But if you're using a fancier actual miniature paint, you know, the more you thin it, you're not going to have any coverage left at all eventually. And so like a good example for Games Workshop, they have their base colors in their paint line. They have three different ones: base, layer, and dry. They also have glazes now, stuff like that. But like their base color, super thick pigment. You are supposed to thin it down with water, but it still gives you good coverage. Their layer paint is literally for layering on colors and highlights, right? So it's already pretty thin. Their glazes are like, it's just a tint. It tints whatever you apply it to. So yeah, I mean, if you're a brand new painter, I would just say focus on thinning your paint to where, you know, I wouldn't thin it so much to where you need to do 3 coats to get a good coverage. But, you know, if I thinned out this brown, I would only reapply it to where I would only do up to 2 coats, right? So I would never do it that much. You know, if you need to go back over and you'll see, depending on how we approach doing the yellow armor, we're going to have to do multiple coats anyway, because yellow is a color that, traditionally speaking, always has really bad coverage. Like that's just the way that it works, right? So I hope that answer is good enough for you. But again, I will push the Patreon. You can see the information in the bottom right-hand corner, patreon.com/MiniPaintingStudio. Thank you so much. But it's either $3 or $5 a month, so shout out to that. But again, the next lesson that I'm starting on there is 100% about layering, how you separate your paints, the different equipment that you can use, how you can do tests, You know, there's going to be like an exercise you can do at your painting station where, you know, you're not painting on a miniature, you're painting on your palette, but it's kind of a way to figure out like how you're layering your paints and how to separate it. But so that's a quick little plug there. But anyway, you know, beyond an actual tutorial on how to get used to your brush and thinning paints, the easiest way I can describe it is just make sure your paints aren't drying. If you're applying the paints and you can see your brush strokes every time you put it on the miniature, it's too thick and you need to add a little bit of water. So myself, I've been painting for over 15 years, so like I literally live and breathe the paint, so I don't really ever have to guess, you know, what's going on with that. But I hope that answered your question pretty well, since I saw that you dropped it in the inbox. So I hope that's good for you. All right, so we are moving on to the yellow. I'll put this right here so you have something to look at while I figure this out. So yellows are kind of tricky. It's obviously a color that, like, let's say I prime these guys white, I'd be able to immediately go to a yellow because that's super simple. You don't have to worry about coverage. But these guys are a gray. So what that means is I'm going to have to actually use a darker color. So I know my voice is trailing off into the distance here. It's because I'm moving over to the other place that I keep my paints. Here is this. All right. So, sorry about that. I had to walk away to actually grab the color that I'm looking for. So, what I'm going to use, I have this kind of yellow golden tan color that I use all the time. And I think it should give us a decent result. We're going to test it on one. If it's no bueno, we'll just move on. And actually on these, the hand and his chest, we're going to use kind of like a deeper blue. Highlight up to a purpley gray. Everything else, though, we're going to do a golden, reddish, yellow, rusty yellow. So here's the plan. I'm going to put out this yellow here. I'm going to add like one brush full of water to it. I'm going to look for the consistency here on my thumb. Alright, I mean, that's pretty... This color doesn't have good coverage anyway, but... Nah, it should be okay for what we're about to be doing. Alright, so let's just slap it on, get started. So this is definitely a color that I'm going to have to do multiple coats. You can see right there, that's not amazing coverage by any means. You know, it's going on thin, so it's not going to build up or anything like that with the brush strokes. However, we will have to go back over it, obviously, for multiple coats to get that nice coverage we're going for. But what's going to be good about this color is that when we go back over it, or not go back over it, but after it's dry and we apply our wash and everything, it'll give us a really nice reddish tone. And then, you know, this yellow is already sort of orange tinted. It's definitely not lemon yellow. It's not canary yellow at all. But so since I know we have to do multiple coats here, right, you can see that coverage isn't amazing. But for a base layer, it's totally fine. Totally fine. So we're just going to go through, slap on the base colors. You do have to be a little bit conscious, too, of where you're letting the stuff dry. And what I mean by that is, since we're doing thin coats, sometimes whenever you're doing thin coats, you'll allow it to pool in other areas. And then when you go back to paint over it, that part actually rips off and it leaves like a weird texture. We don't want that to happen, so we're just trying to apply this stuff relatively thin. Same thickness, smoothness all over with the coats. The base layer too, you just want to make sure you get the same quality of the pigment all over, because then when you go and you apply that secondary layer, that's when it'll cover up any brush strokes that you can actually see that were left on there. So it's kind of the trick to doing it. Really, honestly, it also just comes down to the color of paint you're using, how you're applying it, the brand of the paint, you know. That is the only thing that's unfortunate about miniature painting, right? Like, talent doesn't really have much to do with it. Technique pretty much has everything to do with it. And then the materials you use influence what techniques what you'll be doing, right? So like, if you're new to miniature painting, there are some people that'll be like, all right, here's, I mean, and I see it all the time, you know, in board game groups, in actual miniature painting groups, whatever. Someone will be like, hey, I want to start painting miniatures. Tell me what to do. And people will suggest these expensive paints or expensive brushes right out of the bat. And the argument there is like, I have seen people do amazing work with the cheapest materials because they know the techniques to use. And I've seen other people spend $400 on paints and materials, but they don't produce good work because they don't know what to do with it, right? So painting tips really only go as far as the techniques you use and then whatever you yourself personally are using to try and achieve the technique. And that's pretty much as far as it can go. But for thinning your paints and doing multiple layers like we're going to have to do for the yellow, at least it's a color that, for the most part, every single paint company in the world produces a thin coverage for. So I'm using a size 00 brush, which is usually, I think 00 is 010, I believe is what other companies kind of label it as well. Maybe 020. I'm not sure. I know 030 is like insanely small. But it's pretty much the only size brush that I use is 00. So you can see we're just going through all the cracks there, covering everything up. Not looking for amazing coverage, right? This is still the first coat. This is actually probably what's going to take the longest on all of these miniatures, is layering up the yellow. Luckily, there are no other faction colors that suck as much as painting yellow, so anytime I see a game that's like, yeah, and these guys are yellow, I'm like, oh, why did you do that? It's such a bad color to use, but I mean, it'll look great. It's just time-consuming to paint to make it look good. If you're just now joining, though, thanks for hanging out today, as always. If you have any questions or anything like that, we've had some good ones today already. Feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll answer them to the best of my ability for you. Also, feel free to like the page. I stream all the time when I work on commissions, so Monday through Friday, you'll always have new content. I do re-upload in 1080p to my YouTube channel, so you'll see that as well. If you don't have hours and hours and hours of your life every single day to watch the content that I've streamed, the Patreon has sped up versions of the streams, so you can watch 2 hours in like 8 minutes, which is pretty nice. Keeps you caught up to date with everything. Alright, so we're almost done with the yellow on this guy. I mean, I say that and it's not true, but we're getting there. We're getting there. There are some areas that I'm not touching that just still have the gray, and that's going to be okay because they're going to be covered up with the washes that we're going to do. Man, the heat of the lights are killing me today. I don't know what it is. Usually I'm not as bothered by it. But today they're getting to me. I locked the stream companion Arthur out of the room today because he was being extra needy earlier, so I didn't want to have him bother us the whole time. So for stream fans out there, Arthur is not allowed today. He is banned from the stream. Poor guy. Okay. So thankfully, we're getting there. These guys kind of remind me of the Fifth Element, actually. Probably just because they have like the big kind of hunchback and like steampunk looking goggly eyes. Or maybe I'm crazy, I don't know. But to me, that's sort of what they look like. Alright, so we're getting there. We're getting there. Stuff like this, you just gotta put in the work. Base coating is probably the least exciting part about painting anything. And then once you're done with it and you apply that first wash, it just comes to life. And you're like, right, that's why I do that. Okay, cool. Alright, so the last little section here, the shoulders. Take my time with that. Whoops. Some of the areas I'm painting with this yellow should be silver as well, but there's such small details that whenever we go back in doing any kind of detail or highlight on the silver, that's when I'll go back to fix it. So I don't have to be perfect here. I just have to be precise. And you can see too, I wasn't moving my hand there to get that. I was actually rotating the miniature. That's another nice little trick. You don't always have to move your hand. You can just move the mini. All right, so that's a decent first layer there for him. So we can go back over that again. So on the secondary layer, you do want it, at least the way that I paint, I do want a little bit more water. The reason being, you can apply it thicker, faster. You don't have to be as precise. And then the two coats together will leave you with a really nice coverage. So that's kind of the mission here. Well, Todd, I mean, the other side of that argument is if you're a brand new painter, okay, you spend $15 to $28 buying Winsor Newton Series 7 brushes, okay? And you're a new painter, so you're painting for a while. You leave one of your nice Winsor Newtons in your actual paint cup, right, or like your water cup. As you take a 15-minute break, 10-minute break, whatever, you do that 3 days in a row or 3 sessions in a row, your $20 brush now has a bent tip. And that has nothing to do with the quality of the brush that you use. That's just because you're a new painter and you don't really think about, you know, that's something that would be bad. Because that's what you also have to remember. Like, the very simple things that ruin your materials aren't necessarily things that you think of or you're told initially as someone that's new, right? So, like, it literally doesn't matter. Like, especially if you're a new painter, I wouldn't suggest spending a lot of money on brushes because that's the first thing that's going to go bad, you know? I mean, that's just how it is. Or, like, let's say you're like, okay, you know, I got my nice brushes and I want to learn how to do dry brushing. You're going to destroy whatever brush you try and you do dry brushing with for the first time. So that's just how it is. And like, new painters forget stuff. They forget to clean a brush out all the way and stuff like that. So I just think it makes zero sense for somebody who's a brand new painter to buy like actual sable brushes. Especially sable, which is not meant for acrylic paint at all. Sable is meant for watercolor. The acrylic actually destroys the sable fiber. So that's why it's always important that you maintain those brushes with brush cleaner, shaper, all that stuff, because technically you're not supposed to be using acrylic paint with it in the first place, but they're just nice brushes, you know? on a technical level. But yeah, I mean, if you're buying like Tester's enamel brushes, yeah, I mean, that's clearly not going to help you. Or if you're buying the 50-cent paint from Walmart, apple barrel paint, that's too cheap. That's not good paint to use ever. But if you step it up a little bit, I mean, most paints you're using are going to be what, like between $2 to $4 a bottle, depending on the brand. So that's not too bad. Because, yeah, I mean, I buy my brushes in bulk, and I think you'd be shocked. Well, right. To answer your question, right. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to be, like I said, like the Tester enamel brushes, they don't have a sharp tip, right? But any pack at Hobby Lobby for $4.99 gives you brushes that have a sharp tip, so... But yeah, as a new painter, the first thing they're going to destroy is either their miniatures, painting them, trying new stuff, or they're going to mess up the brush. So, paint obviously doesn't matter as much. I would always say buying miniature paint first to begin with, unless you have a secondary brand that someone has told you will work just as fine, is always a good call. Buying colors that you need rather than just buying a ton of colors is also pretty smart, because that way you're not wasting any money, because it can be pretty expensive depending on what aspect of the hobby you're getting into. So right now we're just going back over the base layers here. You can see on the front right, that is pretty much as much coverage as goes on there. So the detail on these miniatures are very standard for, like, you know, these are pretty much on the same level as tabletop wargame miniatures, so that makes it easier to paint. Compared to something like Scythe, like the hero miniatures from Scythe really should not be painted. Like, obviously, if you're a new painter, there's not much you can do to make them look good, because they have almost no real definition or depth to the detail that's sculpted on them. So these, you know, are easier to paint. One, because they're bigger, and then two, because they have like the standard amount of definition that you find in miniatures in general. So that answers yes on both sides of that question. So it'll be easier to get cooler effects on these for sure. They're also not as much of a challenge, you know, like the Scythe miniatures are a challenge. The mechs not so much, but you know, the detail on those are mostly done through technique anyway. But with these guys, definitely going to be easier just because of their size. Because yeah, these are probably, you know, twice the size of a normal 28mm miniature, depending on what it is that would be painted, obviously, but just going back over the most visible areas, additional coats. And what I may do, I was thinking that was not supposed to be on there. What I may do is actually go ahead and figure out the inking process on one, and then that way we can focus on the other ones. Because if I'm going to have problems, I would rather just have problems with one of them at a time. Only because yellow is a finicky color. And you'll see too, like the areas that I'm not going back over to do double coats are going to be areas that are darkened down so much by the wash anyway that it won't matter. Yeah, I can see the Big Daddy. think the drill arm helps with that. The only question in my head really with these are what the highlight color is going to be. If I need to use a secondary yellow color, if I can just use this same color. I think that's just going to depend on the vibe, so we'll see. We'll figure that out for sure. The only other thing I'm worried about with these, not worried, but one thing that I was intrigued by, I didn't realize that you actually use the tops of them as like a mechanism in the game. So I'll have to use a thick coat of gloss varnish right on those edges, like really thick, super goopy. And then go back over it with the brush on dull varnish, and then that way it'll be protected. Because yeah, and shoving something inside that slot over and over and over may end up chipping the top cover of that paint, but otherwise I think it should be safe. Alright, so we got that coverage on there pretty well. Doesn't have to be perfect for to get the effect that we need, so that's cool. We can just hang out there on that. So the only other things that are left are the belt, the chest, and the hand. The chest and the hand are going to be the same color. We're going to go for like a kind of grayish purple. At least in my head, that's what we're going to go for. So I think we're going to use... Oh, actually, I think we're going to use this color. We're going to use Wolf Gray from the Army Painter. This Wolf Gray, completely different than Vallejo's Wolf Gray, which is super light. This gray is more of a blue. Sort of like GW's old Space Wolf Gray color, which they now call the Fang, which is a little bit deeper of a color. This color has good coverage, so we don't really have to worry about too much. Alright, so there's that. And then we're going to do the hand the same way. I'm going to add a little tiny bit of water. For stuff like this, I don't use a wet palette. Tabletop commissions, there's no need to come back and blend. There's no real wet blending either, there's just layering, so. Alright. Getting coverage on the claw here. And whenever we apply our wash to the claw, it should give us what we're looking for. All the bottom of that claw is going to be covered with wash anyway, so we don't have to really worry about much of anything there. Hitting the top of it. Alright, so this guy is finished. Base color, ready to move on. So, oh no, the belt. Okay. So the belt, we're going to keep the belt real simple. Where is that color? Here it is. We're going to use copper, hammered copper from Vallejo. That's the other thing I'm interested in from War Colors, is they have so many metallic colors. And I know the pigment quality on all of them is crazy good, so kind of want to pick up that whole line too. Metallics definitely for me a preference with Army Painter and Vallejo, because they can be thinned down for layering. Okay. So his belt is on there, looking good. He's ready for life. All right, so that is our basic layer. Oh, I need to extend that out. It was covered with shadow. There we go. So those are our basic colors there. Now we can focus on washes and everything. All right, so the first wash we're going to go for, we're going to be doing washes that we can use in multiple areas at once. So I'm going to move, let's see. There we go. I'm going to move this palette out of the way. We'll use it again later. All right, so washes. We're going to focus on the little skirt first. So we're going to be using sepia wash. I'm gonna mix a little bit of my raw sienna wash on there as well. You can see that in here. I'm just shaking it around to get that pigment at the bottom reactivated. All right, so I'm gonna add about 2 drops on that. And then a little bit of their umber from Vallejo. Oh, that's flesh wash, but that's okay. That's not the end of the world. Where is it? It's right here. Okay. So, combination of all of these, we should be left with something real rich. Perfect for our raw sienna. So I'm going to start layering it on there. It looks perfect to me. Now, usually, I like to apply the same washes uniformly all over miniatures for tabletop stuff. But because of the nature of the colors that we're using on this miniature, we're going to end up using multiple washes at the same time. Not a big deal. If it ensures a good look, that's what I'll use it for. Actually, I'm tempted to see what the Vallejo flesh wash would look like on this yellow, so I may do a quick test once we layer this on here appropriately. Oh, the flesh wash with a clear coat. Oh, I think that sounds like a very safe bet for some very sweet results. So we may end up doing that, actually. Using a gloss coat, applying it on there. Alright, so you can see it's a little bit thicker in some areas than others. That's totally fine. You can just push it around. You can wipe washes off as well while you're using them. You can really manipulate washes pretty well depending on the brand. You can see how it's drying. It's just going to tone it down quite a bit. Whoop, if I don't drop the guy. Alright, but that should be pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to crank the fan on over here. So you can dry a little bit as I hold him right here. Alright, so with that same wash, I'm going to water it down quite a bit. I'm going to start to drop it in other parts of the metal. We don't want him to look very clean or anything, so we're just going to start dropping it in. We're going to do multiple washes on the actual metallics to achieve different effects, so Mixing tones as well. Warm colors with cool colors. And remember, we're just going to focus on one guy right now. So that way, when we have all of them ready to go, I can apply all the washes at the same time on the rest of the 5. Usually the best method for assembly line style painting, which is definitely what we're doing. So I'm just experimenting here with different amounts of coverage on the wash itself, different parts of the metals, some more pigment than others. But you can see the effect that it has. Alright, so we've applied those warm tones to the metal. You can see the wash on the cloak is drying as well, giving us a nice transition of color. So I'm going to set him down for just a second as we plan out our next wash. And I know I have it on the table somewhere. I just need to find it. Nope, that's soft tone. I'm looking for dark tone from Army Painter. But I don't know where it's at. Here it is. So dark tone's pretty much just black ink. So that's what we're going to be using. Alright, I'm going to turn the fan off so I don't make things too difficult for myself here. Alright, there's that. And then I'm going to add a slight touch of blue. Mix them together. Test it on the thumb here. Thumb check. Looks good to me. Nice blue, oily black. The same color is going to go on the chest and the arm to give us that really dark kind of bluish gray we're going for. And then we'll just highlight it back up. Okay, moving on. I'm letting those two wash temperatures mix, and you'll see when this dries, it's not as intense or saturated as it looks. Most washes kind of desaturate a little bit as they dry. So they usually end up blending together pretty well. And then once you apply coverage back on top of that original metallic color, you're good to go. So that's what we're doing. We're mixing together the two tones, warm tone, cool tone. It'll make it appear much more industrial. So you can see that's what we're doing right now with that at least. Very simple techniques. On the hand, we're just going to cover the hand. So we can get pretty messy here on the application. Alright. Important thing with washes is that you let gravity do most of the work, so you want to apply quite a bit of it at a time. Otherwise, it will not pool in the way that you're wanting it to. So you do have to be pretty quick. Applying it with the side of your brush, not the tip of your brush. Use the tip to actually guide where your wash is going in. Could have been terrible. Crisis averted. Actually, right there is kind of cool what it did. But, so you can see on the hand, that's the shading effect that we're going for. Just making sure it isn't pooling in a weird way anywhere. Alright, so now we're going to move on to the other parts. And remember, too, that stark contrast that's happening on the yellow, that's going to die down quite a bit once we actually do the wash on the yellow. So don't fret too much there. It'll all mix together, one happy family. So you can see, right, in the instance of that, you're getting both that blue tone and that warm tone. You can see on the arm as it dries, the different areas where it's drying. It's creating some really nice effects. Sounds like my cat may need to go to the bathroom. I'm going to let him in. I had him locked out of the room. He was acting all wild. Now he's crying in the other room. We got away from him for an hour. Maybe he cooled off. So you can see what we got going on here. So the blue is two different washes. It is the Army Painter blue shade and dark tone from Army Painter. So 2 different inks, washes, whatever word you prefer. Both from the Army Painter. All right. So there we go. So you can see everything's been toned except for our yellow. You can see on his cloak that it's dried pretty well, so you can see the effect that we got on that. So I'm gonna set this guy right here real quick. Crank the fan. Let my cat in the room so he stops yelling at me. Thanks for hanging out there, everybody that's hanging out. Oh, I've been streaming for an hour and 22 minutes. I need to take a break. That's for sure. So yeah, why don't I let this dry? I'm going to take my quick break. I normally take a break every hour. I know there are 24 of you guys watching. Just stick around. Give me 5 minutes. 5 minutes so I can go stretch. And I'll be right back and we'll knock out the rest of this shade. All right. Grabbed a quick snack. I'm back. All right, all right. All right, all right. So, here's our dry. Boy. So you can see that really nice effect we got. I mean, look at the hand. It looks so good. Looking so good. Loving the mix of the tones. This back part could get a little bit more love, but I mean, The drill arm, everything else, killing it. Love the way it turned out. So, for just doing those 2 steps, I am pretty pleased with the result. I think it looks really nice. I think. I mean, you know, I don't know. But, next step, we're just going to go ahead and pull the trigger on it. See if it works. I'm hoping it does. So we're going to go ahead and risk the biscuit. We're going to put a clear coat varnish. Turn off my fan real quick. We're going to put a gloss varnish on the yellow. Mix a little bit of water with it. Alright. So here we go. Looks good to me. So the reason why we're doing this, if you're just now joining, there are all kinds of reasons to doing it, but my reason being, what it does is that it repels the actual ink or wash that you're going to apply, forcing it to pool together a lot more than it normally would, and it's going to leave you more of that undercolor, or your base color, right, underneath. So it's going to leave more of this golden yellow, where it's not going to pool, and then everywhere else it's going to pool, it's going to cause it to kind of cling together and give us really beautiful transitions. Just beautiful, the best way to describe it. So this should look crazy. Now, the only thing that I may see after we apply it will be a question of whether or not I should have tidied up some of the wash areas before we applied it, but that's pretty much just going to be me being weird about it. So like, it isn't going to be something that really anybody would immediately notice. And this is a tabletop quality commission, so I mean, I'm not supposed to 100% concern myself with that. But that being said, I am trying to just get a simple but awesome looking result. So for a tabletop commission, totally cool. Thin down the clear coat as well so that it dries a little bit faster than normal. And if anything isn't dry, I'll just turn on this fan right next to me and we'll just get it cranking. Tell it to chill out for a minute, calm down, get nice and dry, and then we'll bust out the wash. So the wash that we're going to apply is going to be... Now, I'm tempted to use the Army Painter Flesh Wash because it's a really thin, kind of tan, yellowy color. But I am more tempted to bust out the Vallejo Skin Tone because that is like a magenta flesh wash. And I think it may give us the exact kind of red vibe I wanted to go for on here. So what you're going to have is this conflicting color scheme, so to speak, of the yellows, the blues, the brown washes we already have on here. It should give us a really, really awesome dynamic effect on the color. So you can see there's that dry clear coat already. So we're just hanging out while it dries. It dries a lot faster than you'd think as well. Especially if you hit it with a little bit of water. Alright, so I'm going to crank... Ooh, that was scary. I'm going to crank the fan. Actually, re-clamp the table fan. There we go. Let this chill for about 30 seconds and it should be good. Let's see. It's already dry in the front, so we're doing pretty good. Looks like there's a little lint. But you can see on that claw hand how nice that turned out without any type of highlighting. Just a wash. Alright, so if you're just now joining, we're waiting for a gloss coat to dry on the yellow before we apply its wash, and then all the washes will be finished on this guy. Then we can start going back in and doing the highlight work, and before you know it, it'll be finished. And that'll be the actual color scheme we're using for this faction. Simple as that. Alright. feeling it. Alright, so it's all pretty much dry except for a couple areas. So I'll try and focus the fan in on the areas where it's still a little bit wet. Like right there, it's a little bit wet. Right there, it's a little bit wet. You just don't want to put wash there because it's kind of like putting oil and water together. It just won't do what you're expecting. But otherwise, I mean, this is all dry. And you can see the amount of gloss. Like, it's not a huge amount. It's just enough to repel the wash that we're about to put on there. The reason why, obviously, we didn't put a clear coat on the metal is because we wanted it to tint the metal, the brown and the blue, right? We want that tint to happen. We want it to dirty up the actual metal pieces to give us the effect we're going for. All right, we're good enough to just go. Let's do it. Let's do it. So, we're going to be using Game Color, Lovato, Flesh Wash. Bam, bam, bam. We're going to shake it up a lot. Make sure it looks good. Here it comes. Star Player of the Year. 2-time MVP. World Painting Champs. No, I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm just hyping up this wash. Alright. We're going to start slapping this boy on. You can see that effect we're getting. It looks amazing. It's because of the clear coat. Would not look this way if we did not apply the clear coat. What's nice about doing a gloss varnish as well is you can really, really control where your wash is going to dry. You can push it around, you can mold it, you can shape it, plant a bunch of ideas in its head. But that's pretty much how it's going to dry, looking like that. So a little bit of a more advanced technique that I wouldn't normally do on a tabletop level commission like this. But you know what? Sometimes you just gotta risk it for the biscuit if you want it to look amazing. And that's what we're gonna do for this client. He's already had some stuff painted by me before. I know he's good for it. He knows I'm good for it. So we're gonna make something cool. This way too, whenever you're looking at this miniature, you'll know it's yellow, but it just has these really cool red effects on it. Looking good to me, man. What's going to be nice, too, is layering back on that yellow. Oh, it's going to look so good. So good. Exactly what I was thinking in my head. I actually was not... For a minute, I was like, well, I don't think I need to do the gloss coat, but I feel like it would make us work so much harder. The gloss coat does actually save you some time as well, depending on the color you're highlighting back up, so... With this, it's pretty much perfect. Layering that wash in there with the side of my brush. Then moving that wash around with the tip of my brush. And you can see, right, wherever those blue washes that we put in touched the yellow, it's getting covered up with the pigment inside of the flesh tone. So all of that disappears. Oh, it's starting to dry. Looks good already. I love it when a wash brings things together, man. So satisfying. It's like seeing a plan come together. Just like, all right, that's going to work, and it's going to work well. So up top here, might be a little bit difficult. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to push this ink around and not touch it again. I think that's going to look okay, so I'm not going to touch it. On really broad areas, applying a wash is a little bit risky. It can be kind of weird. But I think that turned out fine, so I'm not going to worry about it. Is that a phone call? Nope. It's a Google message. Alright. I'm happy about it. Gonna layer it on top here. Just so that we get the color on there. Obviously that top part didn't like detail. Okay, oh, and then right here. But of course, can't forget that. Okay. So we're gonna crank the fan on, and you're gonna watch it dry. And it will, oops, sorry, wow, I'm just hitting my camera everywhere. And you'll see how it actually kills the shine as it begins to dry. It shouldn't take too long. I'm gonna move around the ink where I think it's layered in there too much. Any kind of fan will immediately start to make this dry super fast. It's really, really responsive to airflow. If you have an airbrush, you can just literally shoot the airbrush with the compressed air. So I'm just going to be rotating this a little bit. So you can see it's like a magenta red wash that we're placing, layering into the yellow. Yeah, that looks great to me. Exactly the type of effect we're looking for. As exciting watching paint dry is, of course. Go ahead and drop in the chat if you guys have been working on anything cool, where you're watching from, if you had a funny costume for Halloween. Appreciate you watching as always. If you need anything painted, feel free to hit me up for a quote on commission pricing. If you're a painter yourself and you're interested in learning new techniques, anything like that, all the stuff that I do for my commissions, definitely check out my Patreon. I also raffle away a display level miniature every month on my Patreon. And then ship that out to the winner. So you can see it's really starting to dry now. It's looking much more subtle in the areas where it's dry. Washes are also one of the easiest techniques that you can use as a beginner painter. Alright, so we're getting there. So this portion's pretty much finished, so you can see what it did. You get really, really, really smooth transitions right there. All over the mini. And when we go back over with that base yellow, all we're going to have to do are edge highlights, and it's going to look great. Super great. The base also is supposed to get some texture, but I mean, this dude, there's like no base visible. We'll still figure it out. They're also supposed to be on these base clips. But, so, you know, the red that you're seeing in that shade will also tie into the base there, which is nice. And it's almost all the way dry. You can see in the deepest recesses, we're still dealing with it. But it's almost dry. And then we can go back in and start highlighting up. Really, we could start right now, so why not? Alright. First and easiest thing that we can highlight up is probably its little skirt, so we can do that. What is this? What are you? There we go. It was just a speck of dust. Alright, so fans off.
You can see dry, looking pretty rad. Yeah, I think it looks pretty badass. All right, so. Oh. Sorry, guys. Got a phone call. Give me a second. I'm back. So that was a IRS scam phone call. That's cool. Got one of those yesterday as well. They're like, you're hiding something from the IRS. And I'm like, the IRS doesn't call. All right. So, let's get this brown, shall we? Where's the brush that we were using? I'm kind of lost here. I'm lost, guys. I'm lost. Here we are. Gonna add in a little bit of water so we can layer it up all nice. Thumb check. Too thin. Thumb check. Just right. All right. It's just going on the ridges of the cloak, reapplying the base color. Simple one color highlights. So you can see what we're doing. It ain't rocket science. Nice and easy. Leaving the majority of that wash effect visible. By the way, if you haven't seen the second season, all of the second season of Stranger Things yet, Snape kills Dumbledore at the end, so I figured I'd go ahead and save you the time. Snape kills Dumbledore at the end of Stranger Things Season 2, so just don't waste your time watching it. It's not worth it. You know, I know people don't like spoilers, but I thought I would save you guys time, because I know I was mad about it. Snape kills Dumbledore. Alright. Very simple highlighting. You see what we're doing here, right? You guys can see that. Anybody can do this technique. If you think something like this would make you nervous, just try it. Give yourself a little bit more credit. Anybody can pull it off. It's simple. Just put a wash on your base color and then reapply a little bit of that base color. And you're good to go. You've got a great looking transition, great looking highlight. All your friends are going to be jealous. And your game will look that much cooler too, as an added side benefit. Thanks for hanging out with us today. If you're just now hanging out, we are working on one of the factions for Anachrony. As you can tell, we have made some serious progress. Oh yeah, let me double check my give me 1 second here, make sure that my comments haven't fallen off again like they were, because that seems to happen off and on. So please bear with me as we... Oh, gotta mute that for a second. Alright. Yeah, we're good. Alright. Moving back on in. Broader areas, doing highlights back to a base color. Just keep it smart, keep it simple. Our paint is thinned out a little bit, so you don't have to worry too much You can just go in with soft transition effects. A little something like that. On a broader area is just fine. A little something, little something.
I like the way that looks. I think that looks good.
So, this month, I think, for the Patreon giveaway, I think I'm going to paint up a Warhammer Lord of Change. The original one, so no, unfortunately I'm not giving away a $140 miniature, I'm just giving away a $40 miniature. It has some custom conversion work. I'll work on that on the stream as well, and then we will raffle that away to the Patreon subscribers. So, that'll just be $5, and you'll end up getting something, you know, that's worth well over 140, 150. Definitely worthwhile. You also get, obviously, all the tutorials and all that stuff as well that I do on the Patreon. If you're into painting, if you ever thought you wanted to learn to paint, you name it. That's what that's for. If you're looking to get something commission painted, feel free to hit me up for a quote. Cheap, fast, good results. Unless you want display quality stuff, then it takes a little bit longer, and it's not as cheap, but it still looks amazing.
Alright, so we're just moving on through. Alright, so that's pretty much good for those highlights. Next, I say we go after the blue. Possibly. Go after the blue. Why not?
Let's go after the blue.
Highlight that up with gray. Joshua, was the wash mixed with the same base color used for the skirt? No, the wash is just a few different other color washes. So normally the way that the my tabletop method works, you just do one wash on a base color and then you use that same base color to highlight it back up. So I don't mix them with anything. That was just mixed with a little bit of water. So the raw sienna color to highlight it back up. Okay, so obviously we used this color as the base color, that wolf gray. But you can tell that's pretty dark. But I also like that transition. So you know what? We're going to experiment here for a second. And see, how dark is that? Okay, so it didn't... Alright. We're gonna get really detailed here. Let me move this over. There we go.
So we're gonna go in for some real detail work.
Unfortunately, but... Just gonna be doing the edges.
So obviously, you know, we're painting some super tiny ass thin lines here, but if you just believe in yourself, hold your breath, don't fart, you too can do these lines. If you mess up, wipe it off really fast. You're not gonna mess it up. There we go.
Bam. Perfecto.
Alright, gotta do the top part. Gotta get the right angle here. It's all about the angles. Alright.
Alright, so you see what we're doing? You see what's going on here, right? You know, right there, that little panel. We're just doing the outside edge. Gonna make it look nice.
Gonna make it look nice and crisp. For these other panels, I'm not gonna go all the way down the middle. I think that would cheapen the effect that we did, so we're just gonna do the edges.
Maybe even a broader edge.
I think that's a safe bet. Tip of the finger, little claw. This hand kind of looks like clamps from Futurama, a little bit. That's what the vibe I'm getting. If you're just now joining, thanks for hanging out today so much. Always appreciate it. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Hope you had an awesome Halloween. I hope you're having a terrific week. If you're not, you've still got time to have a good week. If you're not having a good week, it's alright.
Things get better. Alright, so we're just slowly going around these edges here. Highlighting up that nice little power claw.
Leaving most of the detail up to the wash that we applied. Mostly because it turned out so well. If it hadn't, it might be a different story, but it did turn out pretty good, so we're just going to roll with it.
Alright, so the claw is finito. It is finished. I think it looks pretty sweet, right? It looks like a cool futuristic mech claw, I believe. Probably not going to do that eye right there in red. I don't think that would pop enough against the other color we've used, so I think we're gonna go for a scarlet or a like ruby pink type of color, really bright, like neon pale pink.
Gonna add a little bit of water because this is dying on us. Thumb check looks good. Alright, let's keep it up. Oh, there's a lot of water there, sorry. Alright. Almost had a slight disaster. Glad we didn't.
Cyberbullying is rampant on the internet. It's often impossible to identify the bully.
Boom. Boom. Just try to do some line work there. Nothing insane.
Just take a deep breath if you're a new painter. You're not real confident with the brush, and just believe that you can do it. Boom. You'll get it. And you know what? We're not even going to highlight the stomach. We're just going to separate the chest plate. We're not even going to touch it. We're just going to leave it just like that. All right, so the blue is done. His skirt is done. So we have what? The yellow and the metal. That is correct. You know, we could do the metal. Or we could do the yellow. We could do his eyeball. Let's do his eyeball. I already have an idea in mind. Sorry, I just knocked the hell out of that camera. Ooh, I did it again. So we're going to use pale violet red. Alright, so we're going to let that dry, and so obviously it's like bright pink right now, but you'll see what we're going to do with it with the wash and then the actual effect to paint it on. So it won't be that color, but it'll be that base color. Alright, so let's test the yellow real quick, the edge highlight. We'll see how it looks. See if we can just do it direct or if I have to water it down. So you can see what I'm doing there. I'm trying to differentiate the different panels by doing more line work. Same thing that we did on the hand and the chest. Certain sections, like right here, I'll just highlight it all the way back up. And we may have to do like multiple layers, right, to actually highlight it back up. But we'll be able to get it. So you can see the idea of what we're going for, right? Very top of each section, we're just painting a line on the left-hand side. And then the right-hand side, you're just painting lines. That's all you're doing. And then filling in the bottom going up. So we're going to have that nice shading effect on top, right? Because you got these big old tubes. All his little little whiskers, right? I bet you can't unsee that. Like he has whiskers on the side of his face. Think about that for a second. And that's what we're going to add on there. And then you're going to shade it back up. Down at the bottom, we're just going to do one singular line.
Just like that. Now we're going to do an edge on the arm. There you go. Easy peasy.
Easy peasy highlights, guys. Using a really loaded brush.
Getting a real nice effect there. So obviously spending more time on certain areas of the miniature while not touching others at all. Just leaving that wash as it is. Really easy method to use.
Just doing edge highlights, stuff like that. If you're just now joining.
All we did to do all the shading effect, if you weren't watching earlier, we put a gloss coat over the golden yellow undertone, and then we applied a nice scarlet kind of magenta flesh wash all over that. That's how we got all those nice shades. Now we're just going back, doing some edge highlights here and there, getting some really nice effects. You can see, right, no shading on the back, that's what we're looking at. And then on the front, just going back, highlighting very small portions. That's the awesome effect that you get.
All right, so that's the front right there. That's all the highlights. That's what we're doing. That's what it looks like. Obviously, other than the top. I'll probably fill the inside of that with black. All right, so let's keep moving around here.
Internet boy.
I'm not happy with the consistency I'm getting, so I'm gonna water it down a little bit. There we go. Piece of something right there. What are you? There we go. Thanks for hanging out today. If you have any questions, anything like that, always feel free to ask. Everything we're doing today is pretty simple. Just a bunch of different techniques. If you're ever interested in having anything commission painted, feel free to ask. Send you a quote. Alright, so now we just got to focus on those little back panels there on the left and right. I am in Oklahoma, USA. I have people ship international all the time, though. Right now I have a client in Japan. I just shipped something out to Manchester in the United Kingdom, so to me it doesn't matter where you are. Shipping isn't too bad. Easy peasy edge highlights there. All right. quick as that. So you can see we're almost done. I mean, I can really connect it on the sides here. Do that. Oh, the back right here. Sorry. Didn't see that. There we go. All right. So as you can see, we have completed this guy.
So the highlights there, really simple. Bunch of edge highlights. The last thing that we need to give some attention to is the glass lens on the eyeball. And if you had to guess how we're going to do it, and you've been watching at all, that's right, it's going to be a wash. Red wash from Army Painter. Really simple.
Turn the fan on in front of it real quick.
Let that wash dry. Oh, what's up, palette? Look at that.
Wibble wobble.
That palette is disappearing on us.
Alright, and kill it.
So you can see the hook we did right there. Real zoomed in. Then we're going to do 2 random dots. There you go. So that's it for the eyeball. So there it is. I believe that'll be the base that we use, or at least that'll be all of the methods for this faction. So I have 5 more to do because there are 6 per. But as you can see, right, like what I'll do the rest of the evening, I won't do it on stream because it'll be boring as hell, but just need to do the base colors, and then tomorrow we can apply all the washes and finish out this faction and move on to the next one. So as always, thanks for hanging out today. We've been going for what, 2 hours, 18 minutes? Not too bad. So this will be the first faction for the Anachrony commission. If you ever need anything commission painted, feel free to hit me up. This is tabletop quality, so this is the lowest tier that I offer, but obviously really awesome results. They are bigger miniatures with really good detail, so easier to paint. But I offer 3 different levels. Also for people that paint, I have the Patreon page you can see right here in the right-hand corner. Patreon.com/minipaintingstudio. As always, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate you. Like and follow the page. You can also find me on YouTube where I re-upload stuff as well. So, thanks again. I hope you guys have an awesome day.